Hey, hey, hey. Long time no see, y'all. I know it's been a long, long time, but I wanted to come on here just really, really quickly. As soon as I was going to say as soon as I can. I'm on here already. But I'm here and I have something to say, okay? And so hopefully you guys have been doing well. I know it's been a long time. Life has been life and y'all. And so I'm so glad that I'm back with you guys. Please go ahead and share this to your networks if you have anybody that may be suffering, or even any family members, any friends that may have issues with PCOS. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that today. Now, I'm not an expert, but I love to research and I love to figure out the answers to the questions that people ask me. And so, um, first of all, good evening. Today is Sunday, the 23rd of February, 2025, y'all. I think at the last time I came to y'all was in 2024. So it's been a few months. So I'm just happy to be here. Thank you to everyone who is watching. Hey, to whoever that is. I see that there's some people on. And so I want to talk about PCOS today. And the reason why I'm talking about that is because there are so many people you hear in social media, you hear talking to your coworkers. When I worked at the hospital, I used to always hear people talking about it and looking at their different tests and them coming in just to figure out what was going on with them and then what could they do to alleviate this issue that they were having. So first of all, what in the world is PCOS? And this is for the ladies. Guys, if you have a wife or a significant other, this is information that's good for you to listen to as well, okay? So PCOS, and I'll be looking down because I have notes, so that's why I'm looking down occasionally. But PCOS is what we call polycystic ovary syndrome. And so, what it is, it's just a hormonal disease that is characterized by irregular menstrual cycles, hyperandrogenism, which is increased levels of testosterone in the female body, and also polycystic ovaries. And so you're probably saying, what in the world is a polycystic ovary? A polycystic ovary, as women, we have one uterus, we have two ovaries. And so, what the ovaries are, they are actually little organs that hold all of our eggs. So, all of your babies that you're going to have are sitting there as eggs in your ovaries, all right? And in each little it's like little sacs. It's the only way I can really describe it. It's like little sacs that the ovaries are in. I mean, not the ovaries, but that the eggs are in on the inside of the ovary. And so, what happens with PCOS is that a lot of times you have the ovaries, say, like almost like it's in the sacs become inflamed and it's like it becomes a follicle and then it bursts. And then that's when the egg comes out and then it floats down the fallopian tube and then the sperm meets it and then that's how you get pregnant. However, with PCOS, because of the imbalance of hormones, you'll have where a lot of the follicles are forming, a lot of these sacs are forming, and they never burst. They just sit there. And that's why you find that a lot of women who have PCOS have issues with infertility. All right. And so PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, we already said that it's a disorder that's caused by an imbalance of hormones. But the main factor of PCOS is actually imbalance in the insulin in the person's body. So it's a hormonal, it manifests as your hormones being off balance, but the issue is that you have insulin resistance, which means that you have something's going on with your insulin, in that there's a lot of insulin floating around in your bloodstream, but it's not acting the way that it should to the blood glucose levels that are around in your bloodstream. Okay. And so the main factor, or one of the main factors, and this is something that's seen in about 60% of PCOS diagnoses or women who have PCOS, is obesity. However, we still have that 40% that don't even have obesity. They might just be slightly overweight, but there's no obesity even near them. So this means that if you live in a thin body or if you live in a thick body, you can have PCOS, okay? And so I'm going to talk to it might seem like that I'm pushing toward the women who may be called obese or who may have some thickness on them, but I'm just going to talk about some of the things that we can do as women, or some things women can do in order to help to get that insulin back into balance, because that's what's causing everything to be off of balance. Okay. So, like I said, insulin resistance is the main thing that is driving PCOS. Okay. And so that's why whenever you go to the doctor and they say that you have PCOS, they say, oh, you need to lose weight, you need to lose weight, and they a lot of times prescribe you pharmaceuticals that are geared toward you losing weight. And because we are talking about this insulin resistance that's there, a lot of times you will have the doctors prescribing metformin or Wegovy, or like different. What was that? There was one. It wasn't Wegovy. I can't think of the name of it, but it was an injectable that a lot of people used that were diabetic prior to all of these GLP-1 like booming. But it was something that was, I can't think of the name of it. But they'll prescribe all of these different pharmaceuticals that are typically used for patients that have diabetes, but they prescribe it to women who have PCOS because of that insulin resistance on the inside. But prescriptions, you know me, I'm a natural. A natural girl, I'm a nutritionist, and what do? We veer on the side of nutrition first. So everything is going to be food first, supplements first, lifestyle interventions are always going to be the first thing that we're going to look at before we say, hey, you need this pharmaceutical. Not saying that there's anything wrong with pharmaceuticals, but I'm a natural girly. So I'm going to go and toward that way first and tell you guys about that way first. Okay. So prescriptions may not be the best option. And we're going to talk about, I think I have 4 different interventions. Y'all bear with me because I got a lot of notes. 5 different interventions. And I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can. And there's actually a part 2 to this. So I'm going to try not to be here for long, but I'm going to just go through it. I'm not going to like rush through it like too fast. All right. Okay. So the main thing, or the first thing, I won't say the main thing, but one of the first things that you could do as an intervention to help with reducing the symptoms of PCOS, or helping to get your body back in balance, is physical activity or exercise. Okay. So studies show that if you partake of moderate physical activity. So what is that? That's brisk walking, that's maybe doing an aerobics class, that could even be riding on the bicycle, a stationary bike, for about 40 minutes a day. So maybe 4 times a week, 40 minutes a day. So they break it down to 150 to 300 minutes each week. So you have 7 days to get in 150 minutes to 350 minutes, to 300 minutes of exercise. And so when I did the math, I broke that down to it's really 37.5 minutes 4 times a day. So you could just break that down into 40 minutes 4 times a day. And so how do you get that in? You can take a walk, like I said. You can ride on your stationary bike. You can have a dance party in your living room. You could turn on the YouTube video, like I like to watch. There's a guy named Paul Eugene. He is a senior citizen, but he gets down with the walking, okay? And so he does walk-in, and so a lot of his videos are about 37, 38, 42, and he even has some videos that are longer than that. And he's fun, very motivational. And so you can do that, okay? And so the reason why they want you to actively move your body is because studies show that when you have physical activity in your body, it puts you at a decreased risk of developing any type of metabolic disorder. And why am I talking about metabolic disorders? I'm talking about that because we talked about insulin resistance earlier, right? And so if you have insulin resistance, that puts you at a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes, of developing any other type of metabolic disorder, and also puts you at risk of developing a cardiovascular disorder. So that's why they say that they want you to have physical activity, because increased levels of physical activity actually help to decrease your chances of developing any type of chronic disease. Okay. So they say that health outcomes tend to be better when we exercise. All right. And that's real. That's for anybody, not just ladies with PCOS, but that's anybody. We should all get our exercise in each week. Okay. Alrighty, so number two is to check your gut. What is going on with your gut? Are you constipated? Are you bloated? Do you have diarrhea all the time? Do you not go to the bathroom? Constipation is, for me, in the naturopathic world, it is if you don't go. Okay, I'll say it like this. You're supposed to make a bowel movement 3 times a day, okay? In the medical world, constipation is if you only have one bowel movement per week. I say you're constipated if you only go 1 time a day. Okay, so that's constipation to me. But I'll go with the clinical version of constipation. If you're not making a bowel movement on a regular basis, this means that something can be going on with your gut microbiome. So, what's going on down there? And so, we need to figure out what it is that we need to do to get your gut microbiome back on track. Okay. So studies show that the gut microbiome, and what is the microbiome? All that is, it's the world of bacteria that live in your small and large intestines. Okay, that's all your microbiome is. It's the bacteria that live in your gut. All right. And so there are actually studies that show, and this is real, that depending on what your gut microbiome looks like, it has to do a lot with whether or not you are insulin resistant. So they could study, you can actually provide a stool sample and they can look at the bacteria that's in there and they could say, yes, we know that this person is suffering with some type of insulin resistance. Okay. Your microbiome is linked to the way that you metabolize your metabolism. Also, what can we do to diversify our gut, because that's what we need to do to get our gut microbiome back in order. We need to actually provide diversity in the different foods that we eat so that we can have an array of different types of bacteria to help balance out our gut, to help us to start pooping more, to help us so we won't have that intestinal permeability, meaning that we won't have gaps in or holes. Literally, it's like holes in your intestine, and it's tiny, minuscule, microscopic. So don't think that it's a hole and you got a piece of lettuce flowing around in your bloodstream, because that's not what's happening. But it's like holes almost, or permeability, to where things are going through into your bloodstream that can cause low grade inflammation in the body. Okay. And so, in order to prevent that, we need to make sure that we diversify our gut. And so, what does that mean? That means that we need to eat foods of a variety, all right? So, eat a variety of foods. One of the fastest ways that you can help to diversify your gut microbiome is taking a probiotic. You can also take a prebiotic, which gets it on the front end. A probiotic is on the back end, if that makes sense. Prebiotic is the food that feeds the microbacteria. The bacteria. Probiotics are actually putting the bacteria into your intestinal tract, if that makes sense. But you can also do fermented things. Fermented things that I love are kombucha. You can do sauerkraut. Kimchi is also a fermented thing. With those fermented things, especially sauerkraut and kimchi, you want to make sure that you do not cook them. Don't heat them. You can put them in the microwave. Like, I put my sauerkraut in the microwave for maybe like 10, 15 seconds just to knock the chill off, but you're not going to cook it because you don't want to kill the bacteria, if that makes sense. So you're going to eat it like about room temperature. All right. Also, you can diversify your gut microbiome by eating an array of different foods. And we're going to talk about diet in just a little bit. So that's number two. Number three is we want to decrease the inflammation that's in our bodies. If you know me, then you know I'm the queen of talking about inflammation. Inflammation this, inflammation that. And why do I talk about inflammation so much? I talk about inflammation so much because inflammation is the bedrock to every single chronic disease that people in everywhere, nationwide, worldwide, suffer, okay? So if you see a disease, there's some type of inflammation that's causing it, okay? So obesity, and remember I said that I was going to talk about obesity because a lot of studies link these things to obesity, but it's not always the case, okay? Inflammation can be in the thin body as well. But I want to point out that obesity is one of the common symptoms of PCOS, and obesity sets off a cascade of hormonal and biochemical dysregulation, which in turn causes chronic low grade inflammation in the body. So, what does that mean? That means that some people's hormones, such as their leptin, which is the hormone that says, hey, I'm satisfied, or that could be off balance. You have ghrelin, which is the hormone that causes your stomach to growl. That could be off balance, and your stomach could be growling like crazy and saying, "I'm hungry," even though you just ate. Leptin is never is it's going to be dysregulated. It's going to be saying, "I'm not full. I'm not full." Then your ghrelin is saying, "I'm hungry. I'm hungry," and so your body is kind of off balance. Okay. And so, what's interesting is that chronic exposure also to increased levels of testosterone in the body. You remember we talked about earlier that the reason why people who have PCOS have that chin hair that's growing is because they have what we call hyperandrogenism, which means that there's a higher level of testosterone in their bodies. Okay. And so, when you have those androgens or androgens. I guess it's yeah, okay. Androgens. Y'all know me. Sometimes I mispronounce things. But when you have that increased level of testosterone, let's say it like that, in your body, what can happen is that your body, those androgens actually cause oxidative stress to the islet cells in your pancreas. Okay. And so what are your islet cells? Those are little clusters of cells, endocrine cells that live in your pancreas. Remember, your pancreas, so you may not know this. You see, I'm getting excited because I love science, but your pancreas is what makes and secretes insulin into the body. You remember we talked about that the main issue with PCOS is insulin resistance. And so we see right here that if we have increased levels of testosterone in our bodies, that means that it's affecting our islet cells. It's affecting the little clusters of cells that are in our endocrine system. And so, what it's doing as well is when it affects those things, not only is it causing inflammation, but it's also making our mitochondria malfunction. Okay, it's literally making the powerhouse of the cell, or the things that cause you to have energy, it's causing it to have dysfunction. Okay, and so that means, oh, people who have PCOS, you might say, "I'm fatigued, I'm tired, I just can't get up and exercise." And this is the reason why, because all of this testosterone that's in your body is actually causing your mitochondria not to function correctly. Okay. And so we all learned in school that mitochondria is what? I hear y'all. Yes, the powerhouse of the cell. We all learned that. And so that's where energy is made. And so when our mitochondria is not functioning, that means our energy levels are going to be decreased. All right. And so, number 4 is dietary interventions. All right. And so, me, I love to cook. I am a chef. See me about your personal chef needs. All righty. Shameless plug there. And so dietary interventions are super duper important. This is how we are going to balance out that insulin that's on the inside of our bodies that is acting like it's resistant, y'all. And don't think for one second that a PCOS diagnosis is the end all be all, because it's not. You can actually reverse this. You can actually do things, all of these interventions, to help your body get back in line. You can do it. The body is beautiful, and God made things that we can do and things that we can take, things that we can intake into our bodies that will actually help us to become regulated. Okay. So when we say return it back to factory settings, this is how we're going to do it. Okay. And so this is one of the main things, aside from this is one of the main things that will help us do the other things, if that makes sense. Now, eating, I don't know if it's going to help us exercise, but it will, because food is energy, right? Alrighty, so studies show, now we're talking about dietary interventions right now. Alrighty, so studies show that insulin resistance is one of the key factors that causes PCOS. And I know I keep saying that, I sound like a parrot, but I want to drive that home, all right? So, when we eat foods that have a lower glycemic index, studies have shown that that's helpful to regulating our blood glucose as well as regulating our insulin. All right. So you're probably saying, what in the world is a glycemic index? You hear this, you might have a grandma who's diabetic, or an aunt, or your parent might be diabetic, and they might be talking about eating low glycemic foods. And so, what a low glycemic food, or what the glycemic index? Let's say it like that. The glycemic index is really a scale from 1 to 100, and it dictates how fast these foods cause your blood sugar or your blood glucose levels to spike. Okay. So when we say foods that have a low glycemic index, they're going to be on the lower end of the scale. But foods that have a higher glycemic index are going to be higher on the scale. So, for example, foods that have a high glycemic index, those would be like your donuts, your refined carbohydrates. So, even French fries, those are carbs that are covered with salt. Um, Think about croissants, muffins that you eat for breakfast, bagels, all of those things, cake, cookies, Snicker bars, Kit Kats, Sour Patch Kids. All of those things are refined carbohydrates, and those are going to be on the higher end of the glycemic index. But we want to eat foods that are on the lower end of the glycemic index. And so, what are these foods that are on the lower glycemic index? What are the foods that are not going to cause our blood sugar to spike after we eat them? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to tell you right now. Alrighty, so these foods are dark leafy greens. So what are those? Those are those things that smell when you cook them. Like I always say, how do collard greens taste so good but stink when you cook them? But we have collards, we have kale, we have broccoli, we have Swiss chard, we have the beautiful, when you go get lettuce from the grocery store, I always say get the darkest lettuce. So that's why I like romaine. I like green leaf lettuce. I like the lettuce that is like they had the red leaf lettuce. So anything that has that dark, beautiful colors, that's what you want to eat as far as the dark leafy greens. All right. Brown rice. Okay. I know you guys are like, oh my gosh, brown rice. I don't want it. Brown rice is really good. The brand of brown rice that I use is the organic brown rice that you get from Aldi. It's a quick cooking brown rice, and it tastes so much better than the standard brown rice. It still has the husk around it, but it cooks in about 15 minutes. Quinoa, farro, barley. Those are other types of complex carbohydrates that you can eat in addition to brown rice. Okay, pasta, that is on the higher end of the glycemic index, but there is actually pasta that you can eat. We call it chickpea pasta and lentil pasta. Now, what I'm going to tell y'all is that chickpea pasta is so delicious. You got to cook it according to the box instructions. Banza, Banza, is a brand that I get. It's in the orange box. I can only find it here where I live at Walmart, but they have all sorts of any pasta that they have in the regular pasta, whatever Barilla has, Banza has the same one, but it's made out of chickpeas. Strictly chickpeas. What are chickpeas? Chickpeas are beans, okay? And so beans have a low glycemic index. Beans are loaded with what? Fiber and protein. And so those are the things that are going to help you to feel satisfied. Those are the things that are also going to mitigate your blood sugar from spiking, okay? Another thing that you can do if you like oatmeal or if you like making overnight oats, make sure you use steel cut oats versus regular quick cooking oats. Plain Greek yogurt, please don't crucify me. I'm going to tell you how to make it taste good. I know plain yogurt tastes like sour cream. I know that, but what you can do, you can sweeten it with natural sugars. What are these natural sugars? You have date sugar, you have date syrup, you have coconut sugar, you have maple syrup, and you have honey. All of those things can be used to help sweeten your food. Why do I say natural sugars? Because they're not refined sugars. They're not white cane sugar. They're not going to spike your blood sugar in the same way that those sugars would. And I know a lot of people always say, oh gosh, sugar is sugar, glucose is glucose. But I never seen anybody having a chronic inflammatory condition by eating a tablespoon of honey. Okay, a tablespoon of sugar is going to make my wrist hurt more than a tablespoon. No, more than a tablespoon of honey will. Tablespoon of honey is actually going to soothe me versus a tablespoon of sugar. So I mean, that's just my perspective. Also, when you make your yogurt parfaits with the Greek yogurt, you can also sweeten it with fruit. Okay. And so I'm going to jump down and talk about some fruits that have a lower glycemic index. And sometimes you got to think outside the box when you want to make a yogurt parfait or when you want to eat these foods. All right. So apples have a low glycemic index. Interestingly enough, grapes do, oranges, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, pears, grapefruit, all of these things have lower glycemic indexes. And you're probably thinking, an orange? How in the world does an orange have a lower glycemic index? Because it's that fiber. We're not talking about orange juice where we're squeezing the juice out. We are eating that fruit. The fruit has that sweetness, it has water, it has that fiber. So the skin on the apple, you're going to want to eat that because that is where the fiber is. That fiber is going to help to steal the blood sugar from rising. It's going to help to it helps to balance it out. Okay. So it's like almost like your blood sugar is trying to rise, but it's holding it down. That fiber is holding it down. Okay. Nuts, walnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, all of the different type of nuts, cashews. Those are higher glycemic index because they're actually a fruit, and they don't have as much fiber or protein as other nuts do. So I won't say stay away from cashews, but try to do almonds and walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, sunflower seeds. Those are all nuts and seeds are really good to help reduce inflammation in the body and have a lower glycemic index. Also, sweet potatoes. Now, like when you make a sweet potato pie and you're beating the sweet potatoes, and you might see your grandma talking about, oh, look at all these strings. I remember my mom would take her mixer and mix up the batter for the sweet potato pie, and she would get all the strings. She would keep beating, beating, beating until she got all the strings. Okay. But did you know that those strings are actually fiber? And so that's why when you eat a sweet potato, it has a lower glycemic index because those strings are actually fiber. Okay. Chicken, broccoli, any lean meat, like I said before, beans has a lower glycemic index. So what are the beans? Pintos, lima beans, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, pigeon peas, any type of legume. Beans are good and have a lower glycemic index. And also sourdough bread. Why sourdough bread? Because it's a fermented bread. And number 5, which is the last thing that I'm going to talk about this today. And like I said, this is just part 1. I'm going to come back with part 2 next week, maybe next Sunday, because a lot of y'all are on. So maybe I'll do this on Sundays at 9. But number 5 is sleep. Okay. Sleep, sleep, sleep. When you have an imbalance of sleep or when you lack sleep, it does cause your body and your hormones to become more unbalanced. Okay. One of the things that can happen when you don't sleep, you can cause stress to come upon your body. That stress hormone, that cortisol, is going to set off another cascade in your body where it's going to cause another level of hormonal imbalance in the body. Okay. And so that hormonal imbalance, that cortisol, is going to set off a cascade and just cause everything to become out of whack. Increased cortisol, it was going to cause the insulin to be elevated. That elevated insulin is going to cause even more insulin resistance. So we want to make sure that we sleep because decreased levels of sleep cause increased levels of inflammation in the body. All right. So I'm just going to go back through the 1 through 4. I'm not going to go back the whole thing. Don't be scared. But the first thing we talked about to help to manage PCOS, should you have this diagnosis, is exercise. The next thing is to check your gut. Make sure we eat foods that can diversify our gut microbiome. The third thing is to decrease inflammation in our body. And we do that through dietary interventions. And also, we talk about dietary interventions by eating lower glycemic index foods and foods that help to reduce inflammation. And number 5, sleep. All right. And so I'm so glad that you guys have joined me today. Hopefully you have found this informative. And I do want to say that these interventions will help, even if you don't have PCOS, if you have any type of thing going on hormonally, ladies. I know ladies who are like late 40s, early 50s are starting to get into that perimenopause place, perimenopause, or menopause, this protocol will help you as well. Because what are we talking about? We're talking about decreasing any type of insulin resistance, decreasing inflammation in the body, and we're talking about how can we balance our hormones. Okay, and so I'm going to see. It looks like people have said stuff. Pardon me as I go in here. Okay, so I'm glad that you guys have found this informative. I see people have commented that they have found this informative. So thank you. Thank you to everyone who is watching. I'm so glad that you joined me. And also let me know in the comments if this time is good for you, or if there's another time, or are there any other topics that you want me to cover. I'm going to try really to. Just come to you guys more. I love to teach. This is my jam. Just, giving information and teaching and helping in whatever way that I can, in addition to cooking. And so, along with cooking videos, and maybe I'll cook live. Maybe we could cook live together, not at 9 o'clock at night, but maybe we could do it like a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon. So, y'all just drop in the comments and you just let me know what you want to see from me. If there's any other topics that you want to hear about, and like I said, there will be a part two, because I didn't even get into any type of natural supplementation and different things like that that can be used to help alleviate the symptoms of PCOS. So thank you all for watching. I love you all, and I'll talk to you soon. Y'all have a blessed night. Bye.